Seems like everyone's talking about de-dollarization. Is this something to be really worried about? Let's take a closer look. Reserve currency is a currency that's held in significant quantities by governments and institutions around the world, and it's used for international trade and investment. It's like the popular kid in high school everyone wants to hang out with, except in this case, it's a piece of paper with a bunch of dead presidents on it. Now, why would losing reserve currency status be a bad thing for the US? One of the most significant consequences of losing reserve currency status would be a decrease in demand for the US dollar. That would likely lead to a decline in the value of the dollar relative to other currencies, making imports more expensive for American consumers and businesses. In turn, this could lead to inflation as the cost of goods and services rises due to the weakened purchasing power of the dollar. Additionally, losing reserve currency status would likely lead to higher interest rates on US debt. When a country's currency is widely used as a reserve currency, investors are more willing to buy that country's debt at lower interest rates because they see it as a stable investment. However, if the US were to lose reserve currency status, investors would demand higher interest rates to compensate for increased risk of holding US debt. That could lead to higher debt payments for the US government, potentially leading to higher taxes or reduced spending on important social programs. Currently, the debt stands at about $31.5 trillion. The rate of interest we pay on this debt has been quite low for the last 10 years. If rates were to continue to go up, it can cripple the United States and spiral out of control. Basically, every world power in history has succumbed to this problem. So what's causing all this talk about the dollar losing its reserve currency status? One of the most significant reasons is the rise of China as a global economic power. China has been steadily increasing its economic influence in recent years, and many countries are starting to look at the yuan as a potential alternative to the dollar for international trade and investment. If enough countries were to adopt the yuan as their primary reserve currency, it could significantly reduce demand for the dollar, potentially leading the US to lose its reserve status. Also, some countries may be looking to diversify their foreign currency reserves away from the dollar for strategic reasons. For example, Russia is basically done holding US debt because US sanctions have crippled the country. Similarly, Iran has been looking to reduce its dependence on the dollar in face of sanctions as well. After seeing the US impose some of the harshest sanctions ever on Russia after the start of the Ukraine war, all countries are taking a closer look at just how safe it is to keep US dollars as reserves. Not all nations have the coziest relationship with the US, such as India, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Brazil. Even ones with cozy relationships are now looking to diversify away from the dollar in some way. China and Russia are leading the way in creating a new global currency that could be based on commodities. So what can the US do to prevent the loss of reserve currency status? One approach would be to focus on improving the country's economic fundamentals, including reducing the national debt, improving infrastructure, and increasing exports. Another approach would be to work with other countries to promote the continued use of the dollar as a reserve currency, potentially through international agreements or financial incentives. As for reducing the national debt, let's be realistic. In 2008, the national debt was about 10 trillion. Now it's 31.5 trillion. That's an increase of 21 trillion in 15 years. Right now, every year, we're running a deficit of over $1 trillion. That's unsustainable. Ultimately, the loss of the US as the reserve currency would be a significant challenge for the US and could have far-reaching consequences all around the world. However, as it stands now, the US dollar is so entrenched in the global system that its status as world reserve seems pretty safe. That is, unless something more attractive comes around. China and Russia are working on it, but let's be honest. How much would you trust a new currency that's backed by China and Russia? Thanks so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe. I'll have more videos in the days to come. Thanks again.